Hi internet friends, and welcome back to Paradise Lost in Books. I'm Christy, and today I'm here to talk to you about a book called Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. My friend Carly recommended me this book, and thank you for recommending it, Carly, because I did enjoy this book a lot. It's very different from anything I've read before. So let me give you that spoiler-free synopsis so you can decide if you want to read it. Exit West follows the story of Nadia and Saeed, both as they are discovering each other as a couple, and as they discover they can no longer live in their war-ravaged country, they learn about these magical doors that are transporting people to other places in the world, and they have to make the tough decision to leave their home behind and everything they've ever known to try and make a life outside of their country, which is torn up by civil war and is a very dangerous place to live now. This is a very timely book. It echoes the real horrors and tough choices facing real-life refugees in our world today. So if you're interested in some magical realism that is reflective of real-world issues, you should definitely pick this book up. But for now, I'm done with the spoiler-free synopsis. I'm going to talk about some more specifics in this book. So go read this book if you haven't yet, and then come back and we will talk about it. Bye. Okay, so first let's talk about some things in this book that I did like. I love the timeliness and accuracy of this book. Fleeing a war-torn country is a serious reality for millions of people across the world today. One thing I really liked was how Hamid shows the difficulty of getting passage out of your home country, because I've read lots of articles and stories from refugees about how they tried to get out of their country and they had their money stolen, like they were scammed, or the person who said they were going to take them ended up being a government official who turned them over, or just in some way it didn't work out. And then there's the whole danger of making the journey. If the person you're talking to is honest, the journey is usually very dangerous. Taking a raft across an ocean or something like that. It's crammed with lots of other people trying to escape, and I felt he did a really good job of capturing that fear and that uncertainty, because when Nadia and Saeed decide to try and get to one of the magical doors, which are being guarded, because of course they are, they express that fear that they're being sold out or just having their money stolen. And it's not a small amount of money, like they're pretty much demanding your life savings. It was very nice to see that he really put a lot of thought into depicting this situation accurately and realistically. Another thing I really liked was that he offers this great perspective and a solution to the issue of refugees and where they're going and how to handle it from the perspective of another country. The second door that Saeed and Nadia takes them to a home in London where it's like a second home for a rich family or something, and he really addresses that morality issue head on of, is it okay for us to stay here? And then once more people start coming, is it okay for all of us to stay here? Is it okay for us to use these facilities that don't belong to us? Where else are we gonna go if we don't? And Nadia and Saeed are very much on opposite sides of that morality issue, but they're both desperate enough to stay there regardless. And I love that the author offers a solution while acknowledging that difficulty for the people of the country where the refugees are coming into. When they're living in London, at first there's military pushback, like the police are going to try and drag them out, but then they establish a system where the refugees can work in this neighborhood that they're building, where they can work towards having their own house. And London really tries to incorporate them and kind of, instead of pushing them out, which we see a lot of countries trying to do today, like, oh, we can't possibly support them, they really try and give them a way to work and earn their living and have their own area, which of course could lead to its own issues. I mean, the whole idea of separate but equal and all that kind of stuff. But it's just really nice to see a country being depicted as offering a solution and trying to make life better for the refugees instead of just killing them and kicking them out and just being like, this isn't our problem. There's a really great quote that kind of highlights that conflicting morality with Nadia and Saeed that I was talking about. Nadia says, "I can understand it. Imagine if you lived here and millions of people from all over the world suddenly arrived. Millions arrived in our country, Saeed replied, when there were wars nearby. That was different. Our country was poor. We didn't feel we had as much to lose. And I just like that. As I said earlier, he really just kind of addresses, you know what, the people in these countries have valid conflicts, but there is a way for us to live together. Another great quote that addresses that is on page 166. He says that they had understood that the denial of coexistence would have required one party to cease to exist, and the extinguishing party, too, would have been transformed in the process, and too many native parents would not have been able to look their children in the eye to speak with head held high of what their generation had done. Or perhaps the sheer number of places where there were now doors had made it useless to fight in any one. And I just feel like that quote really encompasses the metaphor of the doors representing never-ending war. I mean, as long as there are people, there are going to be corrupt governments, there's going to be wars, and there's going to be situations that people are trying to escape from, and we can either try and destroy those people entirely to preserve our way of living, or we can find ways to accommodate them and extend a hand of friendship and generosity to try and connect with those people and offer them a solution. So all of that just to say that I really like how he handles that moral issue. It's very well written and very poignant the way he writes about it. I also really love the characters and the way their relationship is written. Nadia is just so no nonsense. I love how she's basically a feminist and living in a non-feminist world, and Saeed is the more traditional, reserved person in their relationship. And they're so different, but their relationship feels so genuine and real. And I love the way the relationship ends because it just felt so realistic. It was so relatable how they gradually grew apart and they couldn't really relate to each other anymore. And he really captured that feeling of a relationship ending so perfectly. And not only that, but just the fact that their relationship ended at all, I thought was really great, because I just get so tired of seeing the whole love conquers all thing in stories, and it's just so tired. But it's really refreshing to see an author be like, you know what, sometimes relationships end, and sometimes that's for the best, and, you know, you don't have to have that one true love be the first person that you have a real relationship with. And you know, so that was really different from anything I've ever read before. Okay, so there were a couple of things I did dislike about the story. One of those being the writing style. I have seen other reviews complain about the writing style, but they do it from a way where they almost seem to insult the author's intelligence, as if he doesn't realize he's writing in a lot of run-on sentences. Let me be clear. I understand the purpose of the run-on sentences. There's obviously a symbolic nature to those run-on sentences. I think that it mirrors kind of the rushed, fast-paced, kind of don't really know what's coming next aspect of living in a war. I think that it's meant to symbolize kind of how they fell together, kind of like the sentences. There's no really spacing between it. Their lives just kind of crash together, and it's just messy. It's meant to symbolize the messiness of their relationship, of the situation they're in, and how they're just tumbling from one situation to the next with no real direction. I get the symbolism. That's not my complaint. Just the run-on sentence style isn't for me personally. I get confused. Like, some of the run-on sentences were literally whole pages, and sometimes I would get kind of lost in the sentence and have to go back and reread. Again, it's a purposeful thing, and I think the purpose was done well, but that particular style of writing is just hard for me to enjoy reading because it's just so easy to get lost in. Another thing I didn't really like were there were a couple of extra stories peppered throughout that at first I didn't realize that it was showing just other random people experiencing the doors. Like, there's one story in the beginning with a woman in Australia, I think, sleeping, and it describes a man coming out of her closet and then kind of looking around all fearfully and then going out the window. And it was weird. Like, it took me out of the moment because I didn't realize what it was the first time I read it. And then later, it took me out of the moment again when I realized that these random stories were depictions of the doors, and it felt really obvious, but it just seemed unnecessary. Like, the story we were focusing on was Nadia and Saeed. I didn't feel like we really needed to see these glimpses from around the world, especially since they interact with other characters around the world as they go forward. So it just felt kind of unnecessary, and it kind of took me out of the story a little bit. I also didn't really like the ending. I felt that the ending was kind of rushed, and for him to tackle such an in-depth, important topic, he really should have given it a little bit longer. Like, this isn't a very long book. The only reason it took me a long time to read was because I was very busy with teaching and it was just a rough month. But if it was summer, I could have read this book in like 3 or 4 hours. I just felt like he could have done more with the ending. Like, one minute their relationship is ending, and then the next it's 50 years later, and it's like, what? Okay. As much as I did like the ending of their relationship, the end of the book just felt kind of like, and no closure for you. Bye. Like, we never really find out what happens with the doors. Like, do they ever stop? Or, like, what happens? Like, I feel like there could have been more about what happens, but I don't know. So overall, I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's an important read with a very well-written, excellent purpose, but the writing style was really hard to connect with, and I never truly fell in love with the characters or the story. I just never got that deep emotional investment that I really look for. I think I was just kind of expecting more from the story. It was above average, but only slightly. Alright guys, that is it for my book banter review of Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I would appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And do let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this book after you read it. Until next time guys, bye!